The rock and roll years. From the early 1960s through to the late 80s, we lived through an explosion of pop culture such as the world has never seen. And it wasn't just America and Europe, it was everywhere. Kids in the rest of the world had their own fashion, pop music, and movies. This series tells their story. Today, fashion.
Each generation sets its own rules for a night out. What music to listen to, how to behave, and what to wear. Ever since the rock and roll years began, rockers have helped set fashion. It was true before I started singing, and it's true now. Bands pick up outfits they can afford, and they personalize them in some way. Make it more hot, or sexy, or deviant, or manly, or whatever. I remember the scandal I caused when I wore a black and white polka dot miniskirt on stage and I flashed my white undies. Times have changed. But the miniskirt wasn't just big in New York or London or Paris. It was all over the world. The biggest thing in 1960s fashion, which was also the shortest thing, first hit the Paris catwalks in 1966. It really took off when everybody all over the world wanted to join in the fun of swinging London. It was hard to be hip in Poland. In fact, all over the world it was amazing the lengths people would go to for fashion. In the USSR, even to get a copy of Vogue, girls needed iron nerve and an iron nose. In the West, if you're rich enough, you can hire a personal shopper to get your clothes. Or if you've got the time, you search out the hippest shops. But if you wanted to be cool in Africa in the 60s, where did you go? There was no fashion industry. In the USSR, there were big garment factories, but all they made were clothes ordered by government designers, and the government's tastes could hardly be called cool. I loved my jeans too, but for us, they were just clothes, they weren't political. But in the USSR, both jeans and rock and roll were forbidden as evil American influences. They even had a Russian slang word for the young people who wore jeans. They were called stylyaga, the stylish ones. The state's propaganda machine geared up against them. Brewing on the other end of the globe. It just took a scrap of cloth with some string and the guts to flash some skin. So just where does fashion stop and nudity begin? Fashion is not only dressing up, it's also undressing. All over the world, people have different ideas where the borders lie between cool and lewd. We're still pushing hard at those borders. I actually saw hair being written. The two authors wrote it in the back room in the restaurant where I waitressed in New York. In Argentina, hair ran for 3 years, completely sold out. Then the same cast was invited to stage the rock opera Jesus Christ Superstar. That was an even bigger gamble in the ultra-conservative Catholic Argentina. Only a few hours before the curtain went up on opening night, a right-wing terrorist group broke into the theater, dropped a bomb, and destroyed the building. Now, it seemed that the dreams of freedom in Argentina were in ashes, too. Today, it's perfectly normal to wear clothes with bold designer labels. Most people think it's an invention of Western designers, but some people say it really came from SOP. At the same time the soppers were embracing their over-the-top look, a new generation of punk fashion designers were about to take on the land of gray, shapeless dresses. Dictators have always understood the power of a uniform. Whether it was a black shirt or a red star, if you can make a whole nation wear the same thing, you've got real power. So it wasn't surprising that when the Soviet bloc started to collapse in the 1980s, one of the first targets of the revolutionaries were the uniforms of Soviet communism. There were plenty of these, from the young pioneers' outfits to the generals' caps, and they always had a touch of red. The marriage of fashion and pop culture that began at the dawn of the rock and roll years is now so established we don't think about it. Of course, the looks changed as they wandered around the globe, which makes things a bit more interesting for all of us.